Hey guys, it's Delora Devils here, and I wanted to give a review of everything because during the unboxing, I didn't get a chance to read anything, and that was already a very long unboxing. So I feel like I didn't really get to talk about things like the quality of the cardstock or the content itself. So that's what we're going to get into now, and whenever I'm done talking about that, we're going to talk about the Kickstarter experience because a lot of people have been losing their minds on Kickstarter. Jesus Christ, y'all know where my head's at. And people have been losing their heads on Kickstarter about how long this deck is taken out. So we're going to talk about that. But first, let's talk about the art prints. Even whenever the Kickstarter was ongoing and they were saying like, yeah, we're going to give you guys these art prints, there are so many of these art prints that there's no way I'm going to be able to hang these up once I get my RV without my entire RV being Cthulhu Dark Arts Tarot themed. So there are some that I will be hanging up and some that I will just have to be, I don't know, maybe I'll do a giveaway or something, right? This one I'll probably hang in the bathroom. This will be my weird bathroom art, right? But like, there's just so many art prints that I don't even really know what to do with them, which isn't even necessarily a problem, just a lot more art prints than what you're used to seeing on Kickstarter. I want to talk about these little white books. Obviously, I knew we were getting this one. I had no idea we were getting these. Okay, let's talk about these for a second. Anytime you get a little white book from Los Scarabeo, US Games, all that stuff, they're very cookie cutter. They're exactly the same. How to use the cards. Here's the same 3-card spread we've seen a bajillion times. Here's the Celtic cross. And then that's it, right? So they definitely have that. They have the 3-card spread, right? But then things get interesting. They don't have a Celtic cross spread, but they have a cross spread. And it's the placements are a bit different than what I usually see. Right. All right, let's, you guys can pause to read all of those. The 7-card spread is super interesting. Then they have something that looks like a grand tableau down here. Yes. So, very different from the same cookie cutter things that you see in a little white book. This is not that. It gives you tips on how to interpret the minors because this is a pip deck. So it gives you a 1-word meaning for each numeral. So aces are the beginnings and so on, right? So it kind of gives you an idea of how to read pips, right? I do have a video on the 2 best books for reading pips. If reading pips is something that you're super interested in and why you were drawn to this deck, you can read that. But if you'll notice, the 3 of Swords, the meaning for the 3 of Swords is to take time to think and reflect, right? Oh, whoops. It wanted to zoom in on my face. Only the reverse of it means a bad breakup or bad news, right? I always thought taking a step back and taking a moment back was the 4 of Swords, right? And here, the 4 of Swords is slow fulfillment, stability, and recovery. So it's a little bit different, right? And the reversed is loneliness or isolation, right? So you don't get the typical Rider-Waite-Smith readings with this little white book. You get some Marseille mixed in there as well. And you'll find the Rider-Waite-Smith meanings, I've noticed, are more in the reversed meanings here. And the upright meanings will have a more Marseille-based interpretation. So I thought that was very interesting how it combined the Marseille and the Rider-Waite-Smith meanings into that little white book. And it gives some really great layouts that I've not seen before in a little white book form. Now let's talk about this book, the book that they give you, right? It doesn't really have a lot going on. I don't know if there's a title. There is a title. Haha. It's on the binding. Triumphus Arcanorum Regis Occulti, which is just the name of the deck. Right. That's the fancy name for the deck, right? Within the mythos. Because, guys, this book, it tells you a lot about the deck and the artwork in the deck, but it tells it to you through a character named Isaac Jefferson. Isaac Jefferson, who is an art historian, and one of the things that he specializes in is medieval art and card playing games, like the artwork on card playing games. So that's the character that we meet. And at the beginning of the book, because this reads a bit like an epistolary novel. So think the book Dracula by Bram Stoker. That's an epistolary novel. It's made up of letters and newspaper clippings. That's kind of what we're getting here. We have a publisher's note, which tells us a bit about Isaac Jefferson and his disappearance, right? Then we have a word of warning by Isaac Jefferson's mentor, right? His name is, in the book, is Stephen Rowley. And at the bottom, we have a letterhead, like what you'd see in an official letter from a university. Miskatonic University, Arkham, Massachusetts, right? Very Lovecraftian. Very Lovecraftian. And then you actually get into Isaac Jefferson's thesis. So the actual meat of the book, everything about the tarot, is in this thesis. But the beginning parts of this thesis are very fun because it talks about, it kind of like, it inserts this tarot deck into the history of tarot as the primordial tarot, right? The first one. Kind of like how in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, they insert vampires into a real historical story, making it different and making it fiction. That's kind of what they've done here. A lot of what they say about the history of tarot, some of it is very well true, except where the Cthulhu Dark Arts Tarot comes into play. Isaac Jefferson in his thesis calls this deck the Corsi Orne Tarot, or the Corsi Orne, depending on how you want to pronounce. I don't know how to pronounce these names. The one thing that I will say is a little bit confusing about this is that this deck, within the mythos in this book, it's referred to as the Corsi Orne, and it's also referred to as the Triumphus Arcanorum Regis Occulti. That's a mouthful, y'all. And I think that there's even a third name that somebody calls it in this book. So we have the same deck called by 3 different names in a very small page count, right? So they kind of went a little overboard with the fancy names, but a lot of tarot decks have very fancy names. Like the reason why I like that they called it the Corsi Orne for the most part is because, you know, a lot of your famous older decks, the Visconti Sforza, is named after the person, one of the people who found it, and then the family that had it commissioned to be made in the first place, right? Anyway, getting away from that into the actual meat of this, there is a really fun game in here called the Duellum Arcanorum, right? The Duel of Secrets would be how, like, you might say that. I haven't taken Latin since high school, so forgive me if I fucked up that translation. But basically, that's what it is. It is a mixture of Stratego, chess, played with cards, and some elements of just absolute spontaneous creativity, right? It is very interesting. If you want to see the rules for this game without buying this book or the deck, you can play it with any deck, of course. And if you go to the Bragalon Games Facebook page, let me see where Bragalon Games is written right there, so you can know how to spell it. Bragalon, 1 L, 2 N's. You can go to their Facebook, and they have a free download link on that particular post. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I wish I could find somebody to play it with me. Maybe I can drag my little brother into learning this and playing it with me. And if I do, I'll have to film us playing a game of it so you guys can see it. Once we get into the actual, like, the meanings of the cards and the breakdown of the cards, what we'll have is we'll have a little description of the suit itself. because he found the court cards all together in sets. Right, so it's not just about each card, but it also gives you the story of how this Isaac Jefferson character hunted down each card. It doesn't give you much information about the miners at all in this book, but that's all right. But each card will have a short description, and it definitely sounds like it was written by an art historian. Once you get into the majors, though, there are additional sections. So the court cards really only have that one blip at the bottom. The majors also have that blurb at the bottom, but they also have the full story of how it came into his possession. And then it has iconographic leads. So it'll have a page. And this is where he really, really, really breaks down, the art historian stuff. Focal point of the composition, the fool holds a striking pose, halfway between surge forward and imbalance, his face expressing determination and his color tone close to pastel. I actually wonder how Corsi managed to achieve such a particular rendering. What do these pictorial techniques say? Right? Things that you'd read in an actual thesis. And this book has footnotes and stuff in it. So it really gives you that feel of you're reading someone's thesis paper. It's cute. Very cute. And then you have a poem that Corsi, the artist, the original artist of the deck, right, that character wrote. And then you have some divinatory meanings, right? But those are all only for the majors. I wish they'd given us a bigger breakdown on the minors, but at the same time, the minors are picked, so I understand why they didn't. Then we get to the end here, and as we get to the very last major arcana card, the world card, very interesting things happen. You also, as you get to the last court cards, you see Isaac Jefferson in this story, his descent into madness as he is writing this thesis paper, which is a beautiful touch and tip of the hat to Lovecraft's work and how he writes. Yeah, I'm sure you've noticed there's a lot of flowery speech, just like Lovecraft loved his extra words, y'all. They got paid by the word back then. So as you get to the end of the world card, right, descent into madness, and you have back here, the sentence just stops mid-sentence, no punctuation, just stops mid-sentence, right? Then you have the poem and all that stuff. Then it picks up right here. Right? And I'm going to leave you guys with that. Long story short, Isaac Jefferson realizes the role he played in the scheme to wake the old ones to start the end of the world, right? And then he was trapped in a card afterwards, so he couldn't. Mom, why are you staring at me, making me nervous?
I was making sure my doll's in the picture.
Oh my God, my mom. Thank you to whoever commented that you liked the Shirley Temple doll, because now my mom's like, oh, are you setting up right there? Here's a doll. Anyway. So yeah, Isaac Jefferson gets trapped inside the card, so he can't stop it from happening once he finally figures out what is happening. Okay. So as a writer, I had to go on and on and on. I know it's been 13 minutes, but that, I think, is a very interesting part of this tarot kit that literally no one else has talked about. So now let's get into the cards. I want to talk specifically about these silk screen printed cards because I've never seen that before, ever. No one's ever seen that before. That was part of the reason why I wanted to back the Relay edition. I've never seen a silk screen printed deck. They are completely and totally unfinished, so they're matte, so they photograph and film extremely well. However, because there's no coating of any kind on these, they're a bit porous. So whenever you do go to shuffle, you have to do more mindful shuffling. It's not that they're difficult to shuffle, it's just that they'll fall in sections, right? And whenever you have a glossier card, those sections will just automatically like redistribute, and whenever you shuffle, it'll fall in different sections. If you don't tap this deck on the table and straighten them out, they will try to fall in the same exact sections again. So you're not really shuffling the deck as a whole. You're just rearranging sections that have grouped themselves together. So you do have to be a more mindful shuffler with this particular one if you did back for that. If you didn't back for that, just know it's not as smooth a shuffle as one might have expected, right? So you're not really missing out on anything. Then we have the color deck, right? Much thinner cardstock, more of like what we're used to in the modern era. These definitely give me an 18th century, 17th century feel. Like this is what my deck of cards would have felt like if I was a fortune teller in the 17th and 18th centuries. The gilding, after I filmed the unboxing, I had little dots of gold on my bed sheet because the gilding was falling off, the glitter on the gilding, because this isn't just a gold gilding, it's like a glittery gold gilding. You can't see it that well on the camera. It just looks like a regular gold, but it's actually more of a glittery gold. And I will say, if you, just from handling it as much as I have, if you look down from this angle, right, you can see that the gilding is already wearing off. Already. It's been 24 hours. Yes, I've shuffled the hell out of it, but the gilding is already rubbing off. I'm not a fan of gilding. In fact, I was very excited about this deck not being gilded, and then whenever they added gilding as a stretch goal, I was like, no, because I want to chop these borders off. I want to make them more borderless, right? I want to chop the borders off. But whenever there's gilding, I'm like, but the gilding is so pretty, I don't want to chop it off. But now the gilding is falling off, I'm like, maybe I'll chop them off anyway. So I don't know. We'll see. These glide like a dream, and I will also say that I can only shuffle it like this because my hands are smaller, but I knew that going in. All right, I knew that these were going to be big ol' honkin' decks. And when I riffle, I can't riffle them like this. So what I do is I riffle them like this, because it's very easy to do when you riffle them like that. You just same thing, and you just right on the table. My camera's not low enough to show you, but it works fairly well. So that is the actual card quality on the decks. The Kickstarter campaign experience. So we're going to talk about that real fast, and I'm just going to breeze through this because a lot of people did not back this deck simply because the campaign was from November to December, right, 2020, to be released and sent to the backers around August of 2021. So a lot of people were like, that's going to take forever. I don't want to back this. I'll just get it when it comes out, right? Cool, fine. However, it did not come out in August of 2021. I just got it in the mail yesterday on March 1st of 2022. So it was 7 months behind schedule. That also pissed a lot of people off that they weren't sure when they were going to get it and that it was delayed. Guys, no one could have foreseen the global logistics crisis that we are still suffering the reverbs of right now, right? The things that happened in the spring and summer of 2021, unforeseeable. Right? But a lot of people have taken to verbally abusing Kickstarter creators. So given that in mind, it's not surprising that Bragalone Games was quickly overwhelmed with all these angry people. I will say that it did take me a very long time to get them to change my address because they would just never get back to me. I sent them an email, I messaged them on their Facebook group, I messaged them on the Kickstarter group, and then I commented on a Kickstarter thread, right, from one of their updates. That was how I got in contact with them, right? And they were like, oh, okay. And then they messaged me privately on Kickstarter. They probably saw the message I sent them. Once they did that, they probably saw the message I sent them from 2 weeks earlier and realized how long I'd been trying to get a hold of them. And I told them, they were like, all right, give us your new address. And I did. And they never did message me back saying, okay, we fixed it. they were just like, all right. So I was like, okay, I assume they got my address, and they did. But I also never received tracking on this package. I had no idea it was coming in until it came in yesterday. So that was another aspect that was like, because this is the Relay edition. This was expensive. If this had been lost and I never even knew it was supposed to get to me, and they only made 600 of the silkscreen printed decks, what would they have done if they lost it and didn't get tracking? But they did ship it with UPS. So the odds of it getting lost was very slim, but still, you should have given me a tracking number. So it was a lot of stuff. It was just a lot. A lot of people were very heavily disappointed with this campaign. And I really feel like as a company, right, because Bragalone Games is an offshoot of Bragalone Comics, they really should have started the production before they used Kickstarter. And I know Kickstarter is used to fund a project, but what most companies will do is they'll use Kickstarter to hype up the project, right? Additional advertising, and to reimburse themselves on the cost of production, right? But what Bragalone Games did was that they didn't start production until they got all the funding. Yes, they had proofs done of what they wanted, but they didn't actually start the production, the mass production of it, until after all the Kickstarter money came through. I feel like this would have been much more successful. People would have liked it a lot more if they could have gotten their hands on it sooner. Not to mention the global logistics delays that happened made people like this deck even less. I feel like they really shot themselves in the foot, because right here they have an amazing kit, amazingly written content, like Maxime Ledane, I hope I'm saying the name right, did a fantastic job writing the content in that book. That I think I talked about that book for 10 minutes straight, y'all. It's an amazing book. They shot themselves in the foot, for real. They could have made this more of a streamlined process. They could have hired an additional person to answer emails and reply to comments and make sure that the customer service end of things were done better, because now I'm not sure that there's a lot of people that are going to want to back another deck by Bragalone Games or another campaign like tabletop game from Bragalone Games on Kickstarter, given what happened with this Kickstarter. But that being said, I'm very, very pleased with everything that they did. I would back another deck. If they did a deck on Dungeons and Dragons, like a Dungeons and Dragons themed tarot, right? I would probably back that from them too. I would also back it in mind that it might be a year and a half before I get it, right? Because that's what happened with this one. It was almost an entire year and a half from the time that I gave them my money to the time that I got the stuff. But that's what you do with Kickstarter. You know, it could be a year and a half. There are decks out there that I backed around the same time that I also still haven't gotten. So actually considering the other decks and projects that have been delayed, this one did actually come through first. Something to think about. I hope that you guys enjoyed this more in-depth quality review and Kickstarter experience video. If you have any questions, please put those in the comment section down below. I'll be deciding which art prints to keep, and if you guys saw one that you really, really liked, stay tuned. I might do a video about which ones I'll be doing a giveaway of. And until next time, happy dabbling and bye-bye.